Hey guys, this is Melissa with Love Covered Life, and this video is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit more personal today. So I have been having a rough few days on a personal level. I have some things going on in my life that make it very difficult for me to sleep at night right now. So I thought, you know what, why not just speak to you guys from my heart, from where I'm at? Because how many of you do I have messaging me, asking me for prayer for difficult situations that are going on in your life? Some of you, I guess I just want you to be able to feel like you can relate to me. I come on here talking about inner peace and oneness with God, and the kingdom of heaven being a state of consciousness that you can access and something that's within you. So I think it's good for me to also be honest about, this is the journey and this is what it is, walking it out. It's one thing to have all the mental knowledge. It's a very different thing to actually live it out. And that's where I'm at right now. How do you live from that place of peace when troubles and hard times come into your life? How do you take advantage of those things? How do you make the most of those things? Use those things as a catalyst for spiritual growth in a really real and raw place of having to walk this out. Okay guys, sorry. I told you this is gonna be real. This is probably like the bravest thing I've ever done, coming on here like this. I just want to tell you a little bit of my story and my journey recently. Like probably many of you who watch my channel, my hero is Jesus Christ. Absolutely, always has been since I was a child. And I've been studying the Gospels pretty intensively for a while, trying to figure out what was the heart of his message, and what did he really come to show us, and what was the cross all about, and how did he do the things that he did? Because he said that we would do greater things than he did. So clearly there was an element that he was modeling to us what is possible for every human being as a son or daughter of God. And so I've been thinking about these things on and off. I had this thought in the back of my mind, like I should just pray and ask him to pour out a double portion of his spirit on me, like Elisha did to Elijah. I'm thinking, well, yeah, that makes sense because he did say that he would give us his spirit. But then I would think, yeah, but am I really up for that? Because imagine what the type of life that he lived was, just a complete life of service, just constant giving and giving and more giving, and he didn't have a place to lay his head. So then I would honestly think about it and I'd be like, I don't know if I should pray for that, because am I really at a place that I could handle something like that? Well, a few months ago I got to the point where I felt I'm ready to pray this prayer. I want to be able to touch people and heal people the way that Jesus did. For as long as I can remember, I have wanted the gift of healing. I've wanted to be able to heal people, their physical bodies, their hearts. I just thought, you know what? I'm ready to pray this prayer. Show me, Jesus, how to heal like you did, how to be present and in tune with the Spirit so much that you can look at a person and know what they need and speak to that need. So there's this story in Matthew 14 about what happened to Jesus after John the Baptist died. And listen to this, you guys. Verse 13, as soon as Jesus heard the news that John the Baptist had died, and keep in mind, this was his cousin, and they probably grew up together. They definitely ministered together before Jesus started his own ministry. They were probably very close. And so as soon as Jesus heard the news, he left in a boat to a remote area to be alone. But the crowds heard where he was headed and followed on foot from many towns. Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped from the boat, and he had compassion on them and healed their sick. So he left in mourning for his cousin, who he's just received the news that he's dead. He left needing time alone to process and grieve. And he doesn't get that because the crowds follow him. And what does he say to them? Like, leave me alone, give me some space. I need time to grieve the death of one of my, probably his best friends in the entire world. I've got to take care of myself right now. I'm running on empty, and I just don't have enough in me to take care of you people. No, he doesn't do that. He puts his own needs aside and heals them. How is he able to do that? We're going to come back to that in a moment. But that's not the end of the story. Then what ends up happening is that his disciples are worried because the people are so far away from home and it's getting late. And so they suggest to Jesus that he should send them away, which you would think Jesus would be like, okay, that's a good idea. I came out here for time alone and I'd really like to be alone. But no, Jesus at that point performs the miracle of feeding the 5,000. So he comes out there needing time to grieve for his cousin, ends up healing a whole crowd of people, and then on top of that, feeding the entire crowd. Do we really have any idea how much energy this would have required from him? A lot of times I think we get the idea that, oh, Jesus was God and it didn't require anything. He just snapped his fingers and created bread out of thin air. Jesus said that we would do greater things than he did. There are physical and metaphysical laws that govern the way that these things work. And I've done very basic hands-on healing. It requires a very high vibrational energy, a very joy-filled energy. And so he would have had to access that space when he is in mourning. And then talk about feeding the 5,000. That's energy transfer, transferring energy into matter, because matter can't be created or destroyed. This would have required him being completely grounded and completely connected to the energy within. It just springs to mind when he would talk about fountains of living water bubbling forth from within your heart. I mean, he wasn't talking theoretically. This is something that he was living. This is something that he was demonstrating. How did he do this? After just finding out that his cousin had died, how was he able to lift himself out of that state of mourning? That very energy dense state of consciousness, to be able to rise out of that and access the levels of energy that he would have needed to perform these miracles. These are the kinds of things that I think about because I'm very aware of my own limitations. When I try to help people with their problems, I'm always running up against my human limitations, and that's just part of the human experience, and to a point that's always going to be there. How is Jesus able to overcome those things? Well, he tells us how. Over and over and over, he says, I and my Father are one. He was living in perfect oneness with God. He had a pure and unhindered connection to God in his heart. He was living in full awareness of access to the infinite energy source that God is. And he was able to draw on that, and he was strong enough in that, and strong enough in knowing who he was, that even during the darkest of times, he was still able to access that in order to give. God is love, right? And Jesus, being the perfect revelation of God, was the perfect embodiment of love. And what is love? Love is a state of perfection and completeness and wholeness. It's a state of complete unification with your source, which is God, which is love. So it's perfect oneness with love. It is perfect completeness and wholeness in here. So when you are living in a state of love, a state of oneness with God, you don't experience lack and need and emptiness and brokenness. You don't need anybody to give anything to you to complete you. You are complete within yourself. You are whole within yourself. You have access to everything you need within your heart. You don't need anything from anyone else to tell you who you are, to fill or satisfy you, to make you feel good about yourself, or to give you the spiritual or emotional energy that you need. You're connected to, as Jesus put it, fountains of living water. That means an infinite source of life and energy that is constantly bubbling up, so that when you go to give to somebody else, you are not giving on empty. Love is being connected to an infinite supply within your heart, so that you are giving freely and abundantly out of that supply. It doesn't hurt you or take away from you in any way to give to another. So what we have here is not a broken and empty and emotionally drained Jesus ministering to these people out of the dregs of what he has left. What we have here is Jesus being so full and so connected to his Father within his heart that he's giving out of his excess. He's giving out of his abundance. And I believe that's how Jesus was able to do all of the things that he did, like healing thousands of people, feeding thousands of people, calming storms, raising people from the dead, because he knew who he was. He knew that he was a son of God living in perfect oneness with God, and that he had access to an infinite supply. And he didn't just know it intellectually, he knew it experientially. He was living it. And this is also, as a side note, how I view the crucifixion. Because some would say that Jesus submitting himself into the hands of angry people and allowing them to abuse and crucify him is setting a precedent to say that abuse is okay, that it's okay to just let people take advantage of you. But really, I believe what was going on here is that Jesus was so whole and complete within that he was untouchable. He was impossible to actually hurt or offend. And this is because he was the Son of God. He was the perfect revelation of God, and he was demonstrating for us what is possible for each and every one of us, although none of us is there. But he was the only one who could have done it, because he is the only one who has ever come and lived a perfect life in perfect oneness with God, and had such a strong connection within himself that it didn't matter what happened to him on the outside, and he could take the sin of the entire world on himself and be so full and complete in love that he could cover the sin of the entire world with love without allowing it to affect his inner state at all. And that, I believe, is what the point of the resurrection was, is basically to say, look, you guys did your worst to me and you couldn't touch me. I did it. I covered the sin of the world. You tried to kill me, and here I am alive, and I forgave you as I was dying. You didn't hurt me. You didn't touch me. That's the level of spiritual awareness and development that he was living from. And that is what's possible for us, because I think I've said this like 2 times already, but he said that we would do greater things than he did. So, and he was constantly rebuking his disciples for lack of faith, saying, why couldn't you calm the storm? Look, if you just have faith, you can move mountains. You can do all of these things that I'm doing. Anyway, all of that to say, a few months back, I prayed this prayer. Jesus, just give me the spirit to be able to minister to people the way that you did. And I prayed this prayer knowing it's not going to be easy. 2 things happened immediately after I prayed this prayer. The first one, because I've been asking specific questions about how did you heal and how did you do this and how did you do that. Please just help me to understand. The first thing that happened was some books kind of just fell into my life. Dolores Cannon's book, They Walked with Jesus, and her book, Jesus and the Essenes, were specifically very enlightening to me. Some people are going to have a problem with that. It's going to be too new age for a lot of people, but if you watch my channel at all, I've been called heretic for so many things in my life that at this point I see it as a badge of honor. So what can I say? The other book that fell into my lap was A Course in Miracles, which, oh my goodness, you guys, that book is inspired. Like, I opened the first page to read it. I read the first sentence in the introduction and I had to close it because I said, I've got a couple of months of work to do on myself now, just from reading that first line. And every time I open it up, it's the same way. So it's probably going to take me a while to work through it, but it's very enlightening. Shedding light and really corresponding with the Gospels and just bringing awareness and enlightenment to a lot of things for me. The second thing that happened is I immediately began facing challenges in my life. And this I expected would happen. But I don't know, it's just been a really interesting experience because it's like it will be one challenge after another, and it's very clear to me what each challenge is targeting, what the purpose of each challenge is, and what I'm supposed to learn from it. And it's almost like it kind of feels like reality is taking these shapes, like shape shifting in front of me from one thing to the next. So just to give you guys some examples, I'm not going to give any personal information here, but just speaking in very broad terminology, one of the first things that happened was some attacks on my character and my intentions that were very painful for me. And you're gonna get that when you're putting yourself out there like I do. I mean, it's just going to happen. But the point for me was to handle it with love and grace. The second thing that happened was the coronavirus, believe it or not, which really drew out what I'm hoping was the last bit of the anxiety that was buried in there. So I had to face that last little bit of anxiety that was in there, hopefully, and I had to work through it. I had to overcome it to prove to myself how to do this so that next time I face an incredibly challenging situation in my life, I'm going to be better at handling those emotions, So it's all about progressing and becoming more and more secure and whole within, and less tossed around by emotion and outer events. Another related thing that happened is a couple of months back when the stores were out of everything, and that's scary when you have kids. That was basically testing me and asking me the question, do you really believe that you are connected to an infinite source? Do you really believe that God can supply your needs in any way, even if the shelves on the store were empty? And then health issues cropping back up that I thought had been resolved. Really? What I am cannot be harmed, cannot be sick, cannot have anything wrong with me. Being forced into situations where I've had to let go of things that were very meaningful to me, that I started in some cases because I knew that it wasn't God's direction for my life. Dealing with the very worst in me coming out as a parent, as a wife, as a friend, being faced with that. And the lesson there is, are you going to go back to that place of guilt and condemnation every time you're faced with one of your own flaws? Or are you going to stand firm in that place of peace and knowing that you are a child of God and you are being perfected? Dealing with loss, dealing with hurt and disappointment. All of these things giving me different angles from which to work on my own inner peace and wholeness. I'm watching this happen. It's almost like I'm a child in the dark watching this big scary shadow of a monster change forms and change shapes, and I know it's not real. It's there to teach me a lesson. It's there to ask me a question. Do I need to overcome fear, anxiety, guilt, shame, hurt, insecurity? All of these things are so that I can practice finding my peace in various different challenging scenarios, like one after another to help me really grow at an accelerated rate, I hope, to get to that place of such solid and secure inner peace and wholeness that I'm going to need to be at if I want to be able to go to the next level in helping and giving to people and being able to heal people. That's where I'm at right now, you guys. I'm in a place of digging through a lot of stuff to find out what's really real. And what is real is within. Everything that's out here is meant to help us grow, is meant to give us an experience, to help us understand the reality of what is in here. Like the opening line in the Course of Miracles says, and I'm going to read to you that line, the one that just blew my mind. The Course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. This course can therefore be summed up very simply in this way. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. So our natural inheritance, or who we are, is love. And the opposite of love is fear. But we use the word opposite as a convenience to help us understand this idea of duality, because really what is all-encompassing can have no opposite, because love is all that exists, because God is love and everything came from God. Therefore, nothing real can be threatened. Who you are love. That cannot be threatened. When you are going through your tough times, anything that can be threatened doesn't exist. It is an illusion. It is there to help you grow. And in realizing this, you have peace, because you realize that when you experience a sense of loss, you can't actually lose anything, because everything that you have is within you. You experience a sense of hurt and pain. You can't actually be hurt, because you are perfect and complete. You are untouchable. To put it in the words of Eckhart Tolle in The Power of Now, this is probably my favorite quote in the entire book. Those who have not found their true wealth, which is the radiant joy of being and the deep unshakable peace that comes with it, are beggars, even if they have great material wealth. They are looking outside for scraps of pleasure or fulfillment, for validation, security, or love, while they have a treasure within that not only includes all those things, but is infinitely greater than anything the world can offer. He is saying here exactly what Jesus says in the Gospels about the kingdom of heaven being within your heart. And when he says the radiant joy of being, that's being with a capital B, it is the word that he uses to refer to God. He explains that earlier in the book. So those who have not found their true wealth, which is the radiant joy of God and the deep unshakable peace that comes with it, that's what's within you. That's the only thing that's real. Jesus says in Luke 17:20, the kingdom of God can't be detected by visible signs. You won't be able to say, here it is, or it's over there. For the kingdom of God is already within you. And again in Matthew 13:44, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure that a man discovered hidden in a field. And the field represents the heart in all of his parables. So it's the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure that a man discovered hidden in his heart. In his excitement, he hid it again and sold everything he owned to get enough money to buy the field. So he's talking about that process of realizing that it's in there, but then having to dig everything else out to get to it. And that's the process that I am on. I am on that journey of digging down to find the pure kingdom of heaven and get rid of everything else, all the illusions, the guilt, the shame, the fear, the insecurity, the idea that I could be lost or hurt or not enough or lacking in any way, so that I can be living from those pure streams of living water and not dependent upon anything else, so that I can give freely without emptying myself. As the Course in Miracles says in another place, heaven is not a place or a condition. It is merely an awareness of perfect oneness. Oneness with the Father. One more quote from A Course in Miracles. Every situation properly perceived becomes an opportunity to heal, because everything is about our perception. And Jesus said, repent or change your mind. because the kingdom of heaven is already here. And that's what I'm working towards, you guys. I hope that some of that made sense. Don't forget to talk to me in the comments. I will hopefully be back next week with a normal video for you guys. So be loved, be happy, be at peace, and thank you for watching.